Journey to the ends of the earth. Paris woke up, worked and lived under these sounds. The square rustled in front of the medieval temple. Once it used to fit the city's entire population of 10,000 people. Now even tourists need to take turns to walk in after they had visited the topmost attraction of feeding birds. Amazingly, sparrows from Notre-Dame de Paris are absolutely not timid. Notre-Dame de Paris is like music frozen in stone. France's all roads take off from this geographical heart, and here too began the pathway to the unexplored steppe. Chapter 1. Undercover Monk. Brother William of Rubruck, the lowest from the order of Friars Minor, sends his respects to His Excellency Monarch Louis, the great King of France. He has gone to the land of foreign nations and will experience both the good and the bad in everything. Flemish Rubruck was ready for trials. He was around 40 years of age, fantastically healthy and extremely sturdy. Some data suggests that this Franciscan monk walked barefoot even in winter, as was strictly adhering to his order's rules. Of course, I wouldn't try to do this in winter, but it's autumn now, so I might give it a go. He was also an excellent diplomat. He could easily win trust, had dignified manners and amazed his contemporaries with observance and wits. Those are perfect qualities for the conqueror of the severe steppes. Well, let's try it. In fact, it's amazing how he managed to cover such a distance barefoot. Why was he sent there? Because he was on a mission. He had to create a military alliance between France and the Mongol Khanate. That hadn't been the first attempt. A few years earlier, the king had sent monk Andrew of Longjumeau to hold talks over the creation of the alliance. But he had to receive an explanation that an equal union would not be founded, and if he was the French ambassador, then he had apparently come to make peace, so he had to accept the nationality and get obliged to render tribute to the Khan. By then, the Mongol authority had started establishing itself very firmly. All the more so as wars of conquest had continued, and without a doubt, the Mongolian court couldn't have replied in any way other than to deliver an ultimatum and threaten with a conquest if the other party failed to knuckle down. Anyhow, the French king didn't leave attempts to establish cooperation with Asians. A widely held belief in Europe was that there, at the edge of the world, was a mysterious kingdom of Prester John, and that generally there were lots of Christians among nomads. Almost a year was spent putting together a new expedition, and it went with an absolutely different legend. He didn't call himself an ambassador, but in any way he was a delegate of the French king. In his further trips, Rubruck always stressed upon Louis' advice that he was solely a missionary. The expedition was supplied with all it needed, including the king's letter with a request to allow missionary activities, church items and books, among which the most precious ones were the Bible, the present from the French monarch, and the Holy Scripture sent by the Queen. The son of Batikan Sartak was Christian, and so they were coming here to have a talk about this. According to writings by many contemporaries, and in particular according to the writings of Pope Innocent IV, the grandson of Genghis Khan Sartak really was Christian and was possibly an ally of the new Crusades. Brother Longjumeau had provided the traveler with both geographical and confidential information. For instance, he told him about the 800 Crusade Christian chapels on wheels which apparently follow the Khan's palace. Rubruck had to check it all without attracting a lot of attention. You told me that when I left you to describe to you everything that I would see among the Tatars, and even inculcated that I shouldn't be afraid of writing lengthy letters to you. I'm doing everything you had ordered me to, even though I'm doing this with fear and reverence, as I don't have adequate words which I should write to such great excellency as you are. Chapter 2. Immersion in the environment. At the beginning of summer in 1253, the caravan of missionaries comprised of 5 people and a few carts headed off into the unknown. The aim of William of Rubruck was to explore the ways of Palestine across the Black Sea, the Crimea and the territory of modern Kazakhstan to Karakorum, and the palaces of Mongolian Khans. He admitted himself that it felt like he entered a different world, but wasn't scared to get familiar with it, except for one evening when after a 2-month journey he arrived at Sartak's palace. The attendant who had accompanied us gave us some kumis. After the first gulp I drenched in sweat because of its novelty and fear, as I had never tried it before, but I thought it was delicious, as it really is in reality. This steppe drink features in the diary entries of the French messenger from chapter into chapter. It pinches the tongue while you drink it, just like wine coupled with fresh grapes. And when one stops drinking it, leaves on their tongue a flavor of almond milk and brings a lot of pleasure to the stomach. In fact, it was namely Rubruck who described the kumis production technology and the drink's healing properties. A conference in Astana. This is a very interesting and valuable entry. Sometimes it seems that he wrote that he had enjoyed the kumis. These things don't change. The monk, by twisting the word kumis, called it cosmos, reassuring that it's as harmonious as the universe itself. William of Rubruck really loved kumis for the rest of his life. He described it in a minute detail and doesn't hide his personal attitude to this noble drink. Namely, his favorite kumis played a fatal role in the expedition. But let's reserve this for a later time. While Rubruck was getting familiarized with the front of work that lay ahead of him, he also had to delve into the subtleties of nomadic lifestyle. In particular, Rubruck describes the internal decor of a yurt and the way it is structured. These are details that show that the yurt was an aristocratic abode belonging to a certain nobleman. It had to be bright, and to make it shiny, it was sprinkled with gritted animal bones. He writes about everything, including the houses, women's clothing, food, idols, the justice system, hunting, death, cities that he'd seen along the way. All this is written upon in detail and with a lot of precision. His stay there is connected with a few aspects. The first one is the wealth of the region that was prominent in the 13th century. There was cattle breeding and a lot of craftsmen, agricultural production. Rubruck tried to picture how the unified mechanism of nomadic empire worked and what its tangible capacities, geopolitical desires, and even commercial secrets could be. The Europeans were interested in trade routes. Missionaries who twirled around Genghis Khan, the Uyghur and Uzbek governors were mainly focused on trade. Most impressively, the envoy of the French monarch saw and examined the principal nuances of nomadic life without even having a command of Oriental languages. Chapter 3. Unfortunate Luck. This is a huge figure of a monk and a yurt. Tourists like taking photos on their backdrop. The French village where the traveler was born is named Rubruck after him. After him, a lot of people wanted to see this region. Everybody read this manuscript, and these stories were passed on by word of mouth through generations. 53 chapters of the medieval bestseller about the mysteries of the Great Steppe have been rewritten and republished multiple times. For the first time it happened in 1589. The lines which opened up a way for a lot of discoveries include the fact that thanks to the French traveller, a debatable issue spanning several centuries was resolved. Rubruck argued that the Caspian Sea was an inland body of water and didn't flow into an ocean. Archaeologists are grateful to the monk for describing the vanished cities. Among them is, for instance, the Karluk capital. This was a big city called Kailak, which also had a bazaar often visited by merchants. We rested there for 12 days. This land used to be called Organum, and its inhabitants had their own language and characters. With these characters, the historians delivered services and wrote books, and possibly this gives rise to organs because they had the best guitarists and organists. There was a church near Kailik city in Semirechye on the way to Alakol. There Rubruck entered a church, as he writes in his diaries, prayed to Virgin Mary. It says this happened on the 17th of November. Islam arrived only in the 8th century. Before that there was Buddhism. Kailak, the center of religious accord, the city Saraychik, merchant colonies of Yekiogus. Rubruck's guide excels everything that had been written before him in terms of observance and the abundance of facts. The Flemish was luckier than his predecessors because he saw with his own eyes the construction boom in the steppe. The Golden Horde cities emerged not as a result of lengthy development, but in a short period of time on Khan's orders. When the Golden Horde emerged, it became clear that some management centers were needed, because a state can be conquered on horseback, but one can't rule on horseback. One needs administrative centers, which accumulate tributes and extractions. This power could become an ally in crusades, but Rubruck failed to reach an agreement. Not a single Khan got interested in Louis' plans. Sartak found him and said that William first needed to talk with his father Bati Khan, and then he had to travel to Bati Khan's palace. Bati Khan said he wasn't a Mongol Khan and advised that he goes to Karakorum, and on that provision did he agree to have the talks. The search of the Christian Khan John ended deplorably too. Rubruck concluded that he was probably the lately deceased head of Naiman tribe, and conversion to Catholicism was, as strangely as it might sound, by Kumis. The matter of fact is that in Nestorianism, which was a Christian religion, Kumis drinking was deemed sinful, and even with his personal example, Rubruck couldn't convince people that for Catholics this wasn't important. A certain Saracen came to us, and during talks with him we started expressing our faith. Upon hearing that sin washing includes baptism, he expressed a wish to get baptized. When we started getting prepared for this, he suddenly mounted a horse, saying that he would consult with his wife. The following day he said that he wouldn't be baptized by no means, because then he wouldn't be able to drink kumis, and that he couldn't live without this drink in this desert. To sum it up, the journey to the ends of the earth came about just as it did the intelligence operation. Religious and diplomatic missions, alas, didn't have any success. But more importantly, he forever became part of the steppe history. Moreover, I would draw everything for you if I could. Flemish William of Rubruck.